What's popular, YouTube? Another day, another demo. And it has been fantastic to be back in the studio, back at casting, getting a good setup now for the YouTube. Right now, I've got this lighting setup working a little bit better. I think the camera is looking a little bit better than it was. I'm going to make sure we don't have any audio issues this time. And got the demo set up so the in-game should be good and everything's working out well. And it's getting better. It's crazy because it's always been so turbulent. Every step of this year has been so turbulent. We've had a new challenge over and over again, and there's things have changed over and over again, and that's kind of been my life for the last few years with the amount of traveling and the nature of the game with esports, the amount of different directions I could have gone in my career and everything like that. And it never feels like I ever get to the point where I get to like settle and relax. And I'm getting very good at adapting to brand new situations all the time. But of course, when you're watching, it's along the way, there's going to be some hiccups, there's going to be some bumps, and it's hard to find that consistency in life when there's so many different variables. But it's very fun. I'm very happy to be doing what I'm doing, and very happy to be able to do these Coach Lab videos now that I'm traveled and kind of be somewhat comfortable now with a setup, and just get back to business. The video a day, as we've been going for it. So today, I wanted to talk about Nivera. Something very special happened where there have been, I think, maybe one or two mid-match substitutions in the history of CSGO, but they haven't been with prepared players that have come in to replace another player because there's a substitute. The six-man roster thing that Astralis seemed to try to create was something that they did this year. But now it seems like they bought players that they could use to sell them off that were never actually meant to be permanent replacements or replacements in any real fashion. And maybe their value became so great. You know, Cloud9 buys Esatag. Bubsky doesn't want to leave because he's learning a lot. Who knows why they're staying on the teams or going to new ones or what the real plans were. But it's really starting to feel like Astralis just want to get back to their 5, and they just needed someone to replace a player for their burnout period. But Vitality, like, screw that. You know, we're looking at Vitality now because they're showing us what a 6-man roster should actually look like. They got Nivera in the team. You know, this is something we've all have our reservations about. I've never really been one way or the other. Like, I've never really been like a believer in the 6-man roster. I never really cared. It just didn't seem like something that'd be easy to do, something that'd be fun to do, and I had trouble seeing why you would want to try to do it. Like, that much more work, right? Because you have to get 5 players on the same page to be able to win everything and then have them play all the same maps together. And that should, just in your mind, it seems like a situation where eventually you'll get consistently better until you start to win everything. And then as soon as you introduce a new player, I mean, now you affect the mood on the team, the atmosphere changes a bit, like people start thinking about their jobs differently. But then you start thinking about it and you're like, well, you know, if you're on the bench but you want to be on the team, you need to be sharp all the time. So you might have more motivation to actually play hard and stay good and prove yourself on different maps. And now you have players like Nivera who are coming in to fill in on Dust 2 and, as we saw yesterday, Inferno as well. 2 substitutions in one series. Really cool to watch. And see him play well on both those maps as a specialty player on Dust 2 specifically, with his stats are out of this world on Dust 2. But then showing that he could actually improve the Inferno of Vitality as well. So really interesting stuff. And, you know, if we're not going to get new maps in Counter-Strike, at least let's get some more 6-man lineups like this, okay? Shout out to Xtaz, I believe that's how you pronounce his name, the coach of Vitality, to everybody who worked on this and Vitality for doing this correctly. So the way they're doing it is that Nivera is subbing in for Masuda on Dust 2, which is not a great map for him, and now for Shocks on Inferno, which actually isn't historically a bad map for Shocks, but recently they've had some up and down performances, and their Inferno as a whole, before this last match, was at a 44% win rate with recent maps. So they wanted to bring it up. And now, you know, we hit Shocks, and the crazy part was, on map 2, they played Nuke, and Shocks played out of his mind. He had 144 ADR CT side, and he was playing sick. So the storyline coming into map 3 when Shocks was coming out was, well, Shocks just played one hell of a map. And this 6-man lineup thing has never been done where it's been map specific. But it actually makes more sense, right? You actually take a player that you practice with on a specific map and not just sub them in when a performance is good or bad. But now the question is, if Shocks is playing this God Shocks level, Don't you want to have him in for the whole series when he still knows how to play Inferno? But what we saw was that Nivera was a more than apt substitute, okay? He brought together their T side. In the 2 maps that he played, had the best rating, of anybody in the server. Ziwu was behind him, but Ziwu had played 3 maps, so that didn't help him. And there were still problems, and that's what we're going to talk about in this demo, where Vitality had a very poor CT side and brought it back to take down big to win this map. But on the T side, he was really outstanding. I was really shocked to see how good Nivera's entries were, and he was creating value on CT side as well, despite the team losing. So, not sure if he, what it felt like for Vitality when they were playing with Nivera, but gotta say, man, this is a very impressive opening performance here for Nivera, for Vitality to introduce a 6-man lineup. And there wasn't as much pressure on Vitality to win this match because they were already guaranteed everything at Blast that they needed with their last placing. But Big, on the other hand, there was everything on the line for them. They needed the win. So for Vitality to win this game showed a lot, that they were really giving their all, and they needed to prove something with Nivera, right? They needed to prove that this 6-man lineup could work. Jonas Gunderson tweeted out that, Vitality casually making history with a 6-man lineup. You better believe that other teams are going to see that this is a successful experiment and be able to follow in their footsteps. Maybe Astrala's opened the doors to it, but they were not the first ones to do it right, okay? This is how you do it right. This is how you do it right. Not a substitute that ends up being really good, who has to learn every single map. You pick a substitute, you specialize in them, and you slowly build them out, and maybe eventually replace them on all maps and move someone to a permanent bench who already can play all the other maps as well. But not something where you just take the good and the bad. This is how you use a 6-man lineup. This is how you overpower other teams who don't have the ability to have 6 players. You take the specialty maps that they play, and you strengthen your map pool, and you be able to play a 7-map pool eventually. That is the future. That is fucking crazy. Now, it does become a situation, like a Moneyball type situation. It's like, how do you beat this out at one point or another? But if everybody moves in this direction, Counter-Strike is as expensive as it is, an expensive game to get into, and teams are willing to shell out the money for this kind of level of stability and also potential. And we do get to the point where everyone gets to this level and really like sports. This will be one of the first examples of it being successful. And I'm so happy that I got to cast it and be a part of that. In some sense, be able to just watch it. But man, what an impressive showing for Nivera. Imagine the stress on his back to come in, to have to sub out Shoshox, who's playing so well, to have to, put up a victory or wonder if it was a good idea to have him do that. A lot rested on the line. So why don't we go ahead and take a look at the game, okay? We're going to get into the match. I'm just going to double check to make sure that everything is all good here. With the scenes, I've got my sound. That looks good. We're recording. Perfect. And now we're into it. And we're going to move into this. So, what was the problem with Nivera? Okay, because this is actually a series where they do not do well on the CT side. And I'd like to talk about why. So a couple things that were quite interesting about the CT side. Number one, Nivera was using the op. Okay, Ziwu was left alone in the B site very often on the CT side with no op in hand at all. He was sometimes just had a FAMAS and nades. And Maniac brought up that Ziwu mentioned in the past, he wants to be a rifler for the team. He never wanted to op in the first place. And something that's happened in the past where your best player wants to be a rifler, but then you don't have a player who's better with an op than they are, so they end up opping. Another example of that is Device. When he opt on his original Danish lineups. He was the star rifler, but their opper wasn't as good with him when Device would pick up the op. So then Device started opping full time, and of course he's a full-fledged star player, so he ends up becoming the best opper on the team and one of the best oppers of all time. And it looks like the same thing's kind of happening with Ziwu here. We're just going to go through this round. But that means there also is going to be some growing pains. And there is the question of, well, can Nivera replace one of the greatest oppers? And even if Ziwu disappeared today, I think he should be considered one of the greatest oppers to ever touch this game. Okay, we can see it. We know how good he is. And so we want to talk about big shoes to fill. JK has talked about going to complexity to replace Obo. That is not big shoes to fill compared to Nivera coming to Vitality to op on a map instead of Ziwu, who has a number of highlights on just Inferno alone. But you can see from the way that he plays that he's not afraid to take his own chances, to play with his volition in mind, to take risks where he finds opportunity. And you have to assume some of the stuff isn't called. Well, it's a really nice little reaction there to catch Steerson out. So they walk down mid, and that's the kill they're looking for. So now let's see. Oh, actually, he's going to hear the bomb getting planted on A. They thought it was going to be a B hit. So let's see the instant approach to the retake. They're going to go up lane instead of waiting behind the smoke. Going to try to clear everything out. No halls lurk whatsoever. And instead, they're going to turn away because they don't have guns behind it. So it was just a stack where Nivera was the only one with a good rifle to work with. And yeah, man. So for those of you who don't know, Nivera is Scream's brother. And the question is it in the genes? And the funny part about that is that Nivera has said that when growing up, you know, he's Scream's brother and is probably playing Counter-Strike because of Scream. But Scream wanted him to learn the game for himself and never really helped him that much when it came to actually becoming good. Now, how much of that is true and like what that actually looked like did he sit behind Scream like he sits behind RPK and Ziwu and watched him play when he's growing up? I imagine there was some of that, right? That's kind of what little brothers do, right? But at the same time, you know, when he's playing Pugs, did he ever play with Scream? Did he ever play on a team with Scream when they were younger? Like, what's the deal there? And, like, how did Nivera get so good to the point that he could be on the #1 French team in the world, like his older brother, and have absolutely no association to Scream when they were growing up? Could somebody explain how that would be possible? Because I don't know how. There are situations in sports where you have, like, twins, or John Jones, for example, in the UFC, his brothers in the NFL. So there's stuff like that. I mean, maybe it runs in the family. There's probably some work ethic stuff that runs in the family, some culture of the family that allows you to become a good competitor. There's probably some genetic aspect to what drives you to competition and improvement, some genetic aspect to how good they can aim. I'm sure there's a genetic aspect to that. There's probably a lot of factors that are both nature and nurture. And I think it's always nice to see that there's situations here where it's not clearly all nurture, right? It's not the pedigree of living in the same household as Scream and being able to ask him questions wherever you want. No, maybe it is something to do with just how they're built. Like, are they both built different? Was it the mom? You know what I mean? Was it their dad? Was it their dad? who kind of put this who inspirited them with this confidence to compete to be the best in the world. And yeah, man, for an inaugural match, Nivera has subbed in on Dust 2. This is the first time we saw him do Inferno. And let's take a look at the AWP round now to see what happens for Nivera, how he adjusts. Remember he got mollied off a couple times in this spot. So the smoke comes down so that people are scared to peek mid. So it's kind of like they throw the molly to push you back so that they can peek. If the molly stays up, you're really uncomfortable. You throw a smoke down, and whether or not you peek, because the smoke goes down, they might be scared to peek you. So it's a really important counter to throw that smoke down on the molly, whether or not you use it. We talk about that a lot on this channel, whether or not you use it. It's a very, very important thing to remember. It can have the exact same effect on your opponent. So now Nivera's going to fall back. They're forfeiting a lot of control here. So one of the issues I saw is that in this map, there were so many spots where no map control was fought for, and there wasn't a lot of re-aggressions when they needed them. Now, some of the arch rotators here are picking up a lot of the slack, and Nivera's just focusing attention on A. This is great. Now this gets opened up, and we have the mini pit player watching arch, and Nivera just making sure no lurk is going to come out. But they know there's actually two there, I think. Oh, maybe not. Okay. I'm mistaken. So he's going to hear him roam to mid. And Nivera's going to try to spot the rotate over. He's not going to hear anything. I think he's going to run now. So there are footsteps there. When I was casting, I actually didn't hear those footsteps, which is interesting because I thought he was really taking a risk by rotating over. But it seems like Tizian was being Loudfoot running over back down mid over towards B. T timeout called. And this was a battle of CT sides where, or battle of T sides, excuse me, where Vitality came out first. So here's a great pick. You know, watching Searson, Nivera, Poison, Ziwu, these operas all go up against each other, it's been a treat. They're all so insanely good. And I mean, they all look like they have world-class potential. Ziwu proved it. Poison is proving it. Searson has proved it, I'd say. Now Tabson takes Nivera out as the smoke dissipates. He's probably a little bit upset about this mistake. It's an unfortunate gap in the timing that he gets caught out on. And Masuda will do his best to make up for it. Actually does quite well, in fact. And everything is fine. So in a round like that, you die as the arch rotator that early on. Your head's spinning. You're like, God damn it. This changes the rotations a lot. And the T's will know if they get this op kill down, they can take CT control and they can wrap arch. So it's really important that Nivera does not die in a spot like that. Let's say he dies. Let's say he dies after they wrap Moto. That's a little different because so much time has passed since before they've wrapped arch that it can change how the CTs have rotated already. But if Nivera dies too soon, like if he dies, even if he dies here, let's say he dies top mid, taking this risk, it's not as bad than if he dies at the arch corner. Because if he dies at the arch corner, they could hit his sight completely, shut off rotations, wrap, right, get their claws in deep really quick. But if Nivera dies top mid when he's picking T stairs, no big deal. They can actually work around that. It sucks to be down 5v4, but at least you have the op on your side. He's died so early that they can't actually attack A that quickly. The rotations can come in. So we'll pay attention to that. A nice shot into Xanteris, very quick. And another great shot, honestly. Seeing a little bit of the kind of like drag shots, not instant flicks, not spot someone, wait, flick hard, click. Instead, he's sort of kind of dragging to his opponent. And here holding wide enough, but not falling for the jump bait. Beautiful stuff by Nivera. And now falling back for another one of those kind of drag shots. Doesn't land it, but absolutely does his job there. Really fantastic round by Nivera. You love to see it. You absolutely love to see it. So again, he's thinking about throwing the smoke down there, but he's not the guy who's peeking from the porch side. Instead, he's going to hold it, let his teammate fight. And it was a bit risky because there was no one arch in that position. But they find that they also can find that Big don't have the intention to take top bracket control. So maybe they want to run the risk of like, let's leave a guy on the inside of porch. Hopefully he gets a kill. But let's see if they actually are going to commit up mid or not. So Nivera hits that shot through the wall. It looks like, I'm thinking with the blood there, I didn't see an assist on that kill. And Nivera will hang out in halls long enough to find a frag. They're really standing no chance in a lot of these peaks. Some really good stuff so far. Always in a strong position. And now he's going to clean out mid a bit. And we'll see how he moves around if he just goes back pit. He is kind of trapped to make sure no one comes out halls or lane. And the only spot to watch that from, of course, is from the pit. So there's the halls guy. Just in time. Keto owns him. Honestly, looked like the shot was good from Nivera. And it might have been the guy he hit. Maybe he hit him just now through the floor. It was the guy he hit earlier. Another opening kill here for Nivera. Tabson gets owned early. And now he'll fall back into position in arch. See how he responds to the smoke. Now here's where you might peek and see if the library's smoked. And then try to help with some utility. You can't really spam smoke, so instead he's going to try to control CT and he'll spot a leg. Extreme patience now from Nivera as he has got some info and does not fall for the jump bait once again. You know, we're almost just talking about mechanics here. Nothing incredibly risky from the positioning perspective. Just some slightly aggressive play, picks down mid, and some really great mechanics to make sure he doesn't die in important spots. We've seen him have one kind of sizable error, dying to Tabson through that arch smoke. But since then, it doesn't seem to have killed his confidence. He's still playing his own game, as everybody likes to say in interviews. And I think right there, he actually does not. I remember this. He didn't see Xanteris, because Xanteris was standing perfectly still in ult. And if you go back to this YouTube video, you'll see Xanteris on the screen the whole time, but you just can't pick him out. Camouflaged. And I actually don't know why Xantares didn't shoot back, but it might have been a flash that just kept him in position. But kind of like the idea to not move at all to really emphasize the camouflage. All right, well, Searson was fully blind on that. Actually, no, that he wasn't. He wasn't blind on that. He wasn't that blind on the kill. He just pops out the right opportunity. See, this is Nivera spectating. Switching between arch and lane. Just spin around watching how he spectates. He's controlling the camera, not me. So it's kind of cool to see this. And I think my phone's ringing, but I don't know where it is. Okay. I'm supposed to go out to get sushi, but I think I've got to meet him there. Okay. Sorry about that. Feels like I'm doing a live stream. I think I just had to, like, running a little bit late on time because, of course, my intros always go a little bit longer than I expected. But we are just going to continue on with this, but I'm just supposed to get out of here in a second. But I've got to make this YouTube video happen. Shout out to everybody who, I think I had a comment yesterday. Actually, let's see what happens here. Behind another arch smoke. Last time Tapson was kind of sitting in it. So we don't know if that's happening one more time. So here I'll see the arch smoke come out again. And he doesn't want to make sure that nobody actually flashes through the smoke. He'll drop a shot. Does he go for the repeak? Bit of a confident repeat. But yeah, his teammate's already dead on the side. So now this round is over, I think. Yeah, he's going to pull back. See the value of these one or two kills, right? Your lane guy, your halls guy, or pit guy have to stay alive. Okay, Nivera going to the lane pick once again. And they won't smoke the Molotov, actually. That could have been a lot of damage saved. Which is kind of interesting. And I think at this point in the half, things start to become a little bit less clear for Vitality, right? It feels like Big are starting to get more of what they want out of the rounds when it comes to getting on the sites and forcing Vitality to guess. But here's a position where you might think, like, Big don't normally execute around this time. Here's a position that maybe you want to try to reclaim top mid control. And I can't remember what happens, but I do remember the overall sentiment of the game was that they just were too static on both sites, and they left Ziwu alone in B too often, and then he ended up dying. So here's one of those rounds, actually. And see, if they had gone and got info on this round at top mid, then they would have been able to have a rotation back in time. But they started to get abused in this regard, and this might be because, of course, you know, Ziwu is being left alone, is being left off the op, and things are changing on the CT side. Hopefully this is one of the things they talked about, and we can kind of see the impact is no longer there for Nivera when he's not controlling the round from the beginning. Starting to go for these passive picks, and Big are not foolish enough to keep giving them up, even though he was doing so well before. They've started to ignore him when he's been on arch. Here's another spot where they're trying to influence the push into mid, but it's not coming. And it's funny, like, it's ironic sometimes when teams are not playing like their sharpest. They'll take the risks on eco that they need to take on their rifle rounds. You'll see that happen too often. And they'll have surprising success on eco rounds when they should be having success on the full rifles. Here, because they're spotting mid, they're still in a very passive spot over on the B side, and Searson takes down Ziwu over on B, who doesn't have a great gun this time around either. so it's not going to matter, but they'll just go for a save. And we see the kill between Ziwu and Apex are so spread apart. And it's always because Ziwu is playing around the oranges, Apex is playing back in spawn, and they're really just hoping it's going to be A. But they're not really giving the big a reason to hit A. So once again, flash off his spot. There's none of this early aggression from the alt or from bottom mid to peek and give Nivera an opening pick for no reason. So I think this is where Nivera's game needs to level up a little bit more and see if he can find impact via rotations, switch up with Ziwu playing B sometimes. Apex is a person who maybe want to call this. Go for a re-aggression to top bracket late. Try to find a spot where they can get the info to allow a rotate, because at this moment, their CT side is starting to fall a bit flat. We'll see again. Bigger just throwing, same nades over again. The execute coming over towards the A site, and he's trying not to get opt here. He also spots a person who could get killed. His teammate has to be careful turning that corner. And oh my god, this is one where actually Big take too long to get the bomb down when there was a weird trade on the A site and they could have planted. They actually could have planted and caused a retake situation. So very strange round to lose for Big actually. But so far, you can see what Tapson is trying to get out of these rounds. Don't get out by Nivera, so that's good for Nivera. That looks good. But Nivera in response and Apex as a caller, I think, are starting to not think as much. Not think as much. Just keep doing what you're doing. All right, there they go for some aggressive halls control. This is good. RPK spotting. And let's see how Nivera can try to get active to support his teammate in Boiler. He'll come around. Crazy. This is the first time that they've actually played side by side, him and Masuda as well. All right, Smoke's come down on the A site, and they'll try to fall back. They still don't know if it's A in this situation. Again, look how limited they are. And how many times are they going to make this mistake? So here's a spot where I don't want to pin it to just one person, but we'll see. Now there are 2 on B. Daddy Searson opens up on Ziwu once again, and taps and kills Apex once again, right? You can kind of tell the story just from the kill feed at this point. And that's a nice clear on Searson. Very well done. You have to believe the person's there. You have to come out with a tight peek. Visualize, right? Now Nivera on the retake. He'll try to support with his op. We'll see. No one's giving him the opening duel. Switch out to the M4 and end up going down. So that's the end of the half for Nivera. A very interesting half to watch. Some cliff notes before we go. Nivera, really great at the beginning of the rounds, opening up rounds for his team. Looked super good mechanically, where he was waiting just enough. He was patient on his op shots. He was not falling for bait shots 2 times in a row. He didn't fall for a bait jump. He made one really big mistake. And then apart from that, it was about creating more value to bring a half back where it felt like the calling was starting to fall off. Were there times where Nivera could be opping over on B and replacing Ziwu on B? Could he be peeking and retaking mid with his team and showing some leadership there, which maybe doesn't feel like it's his spot right now? Could he go for more of the Hall's aggressions, which he actually did once and had good success with? Something to allow him to get some more info even more often, because it's not that he didn't do it a lot. It's that when he did it, he was so successful, you wonder, couldn't he have done it even more? Because that's where, Vitality were winning rounds based on his kills a lot of the time. And a lot of the time they were going B when Vitality were hoping it was going to be an A hit, and it just wasn't, and then they weren't winning. And that's no way to win a consistent CT half. So really interesting side, and loving this whole Vitality project right now. Really big shout out to them, honestly, for keeping Counter-Strike interesting. And yeah, thanks for watching, everybody. So again, Patreon videos coming out soon. The demo reviews will be coming out soon. And yeah, super cool stuff. Let me know who you want to see tomorrow. Appreciate y'all. Thanks for the follows, and thanks for the follows. Thanks for the likes. Thanks for the subs, and thanks for the comments. Most importantly, appreciate you.